Okay, so today's lesson is on frequencies and percentages. The goal of this lesson is to define, identify, and interpret frequencies and percentages. And specifically, the objective is to define and identify frequencies, define and identify percentages. Where are these items located on an SPSS printout? Then how do you interpret these items and then complete an assessment to test skills on frequencies and percentages. So that's what we'll be doing in terms of frequencies and percentages. What you'll need in terms of this lesson will be this quick reference guide document, although I don't think we'll be using it as much in this particular lesson, but it's good to know, good to have. And basically what I've done here is outlined what you'll need to consider when you're considering levels of measurement as it relates to interpretation. The other thing that you'll need for sure would be this univariate handout, and so I'm going to go ahead and open that up because we will need this. This is what we'll look at when we go to interpret. Okay. So, to begin, the definition of frequencies and percentages. A frequency is the number of occurrences of a repeating event per time. It can also be defined as how often something occurs. And so, you're literally, and these two terms are going to be pretty simple to identify on SPSS printout. A percentage is a number or ratio expressed as a fraction of 100. It can also be defined as a portion of 100. It is often denoted using the percent sign or the abbreviation PCT. For example, 45% read as 45% is equal to 45 divided by 100, or 0.45. Alright, so another way to think about percentages, and I pulled up an online calculator, is the second definition I gave you, which is the portion of, defined as a portion of 100. And so times, where is it? It should be defined as a portion times 100, multiplied times 100. And so suppose you had your universe, or your entire sample was say 50 people, and of that 50 people, 35 of them were men and 15 were females, and you want to know what percent of that group was males, for example. So you would divide 35 by 50, which is your total N, and 70, or 0.70, would be the portion of your total that is men. Then to turn that into a percentage, you would then multiply that by 100. And so, and then that would give you your actual percentage, which would be 70%. Alright, and so let's do that again for females. And so you know you have 15 females and your universe is 50, so you divide 15 divided by 50, and you will get your portion that is females. Your portion of females is 0.30, and to get an actual percentage you would then multiply that by 100. Alright, and 30% would then be your portion of, or your percent related to females. Okay, now in terms of your handout, this is a SPSS handout that I have put into a Word document so that it'd be easier, hopefully, to look at. And just to, I want to skip over this front part first and just go down here to where gender is located. Okay, and I want to show you what what we're looking at here. All right, and so you have a frequency table. So you have this first part is called your statistics table. This next part, these are your actual frequencies, and so this is what we refer to as a frequency output. A frequency output. The first variable is gender, and what you'll notice here is that this gender is your variable name, and what falls after that is how they have labeled that variable name. Okay, and so in this case, the variable name is gender and the variable label is gender. What I've highlighted here already are your frequencies and your percents. And what you'll note is, and let me just take the highlights off for right now. Let's see, undo. Remove those highlights for right now. Okay, so what you'll note is that under gender we have males and females. Males are labeled as 1, females are labeled as 2. Alright, and so these are our frequencies. Alright, in this data set or in this printout, we'll note that our males represent 1,860 in the sample and females represent 1,848. Alright, and so our total number of people in our sample is 3,708. All of these represent frequencies. It's the total of a portion of 100. Alright, and so for males, if you look over here, in order, SPSS will give you the percent that they represent, and they actually give you 3 sets of percentages. The one that you want to avoid is this right here. You do not want to discuss the percents under the actual column that says percents. And the reason for that is if there are any missing people here, they would calculate that percent over here, and that's kind of dark, so I'm going to take that away. They will actually count that in the percent that you will see, and you don't want that to happen. You don't want missing to be calculated in that percent. And so what we focus on then is our valid percent and our cumulative percent, which are the 3 columns that were originally highlighted. These are the columns that we focus on. We focus on our frequencies, and we focus on our valid and cumulative percent. Right now, cumulative percent doesn't make sense to look at because you only have 2 categories, but at a later time I will show you how to interpret or use the cumulative percent. So in this case, we have 1,860 males. They represent, in terms of a valid percent, 50.2%, and females represent 1,848 females, or 49.8%. Okay, and so we have, and I'm going to go back, we have defined, and I've showed you how to identify frequency in the SPSS table. We have defined and identified percentages in the SPSS table. We have done that on an SPSS printout. But I want to go back to that SPSS printout one more time. Not that guy, this guy. Alright, and so we looked at gender, but I want to come down here to S4, which is grade or year of school. Let me see if there was a better one to look at. Okay, let's look at age. This actually has something under missing, so you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so this variable name is age, and you'll note that that's the variable name. There's no variable label beside it. Okay, our age range from 12 to 17. Alright, and you'll note that there's no number beside the 12, the 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So the age represents the actual value that it was given. Okay, and what that means is that when people inputted the variable age, that's the value that was associated with that variable. And so if you inputted 12, that meant that people were 12 years old. If you inputted 13, that meant that the value should be 13 years old, and so forth. Okay, and so the frequency is here. Once again, we're focused on this column here and this column here. These two columns. Okay? Alright, and so what you do is you look at the valid percent. And what you want to do under this valid percent is compare it to the regular percent and why we don't utilize the regular percent. And what you'll notice here is that this row here is missing. Okay? And under the percent, they actually use that number, or that 6, as part of the calculation. And because we know it's missing, we want to avoid that, and that's why we focus only on that valid percent. Okay? And in terms of cumulative percent, and this gives us a good idea of how to look at cumulative percent. How to determine what a cumulative percent is basically, if you look across here, you'll notice that this valid percent is the same as this cumulative percent. And what happens then is they take this 14.1, add it to this 16.9, and you get a 31.0. So 14.1 plus 16.9 gives you 31.0. 31.0 plus 18.3 will give you a 49.3, and so forth. So 49.3 plus 18.1 would give you 67.4. And so the question is, why do they do that? It's because sometimes you can look at your cumulative percent and make better sense of what your data is trying to tell you. And so you want to basically look to see if a story or an interpretation of what you see over here can be better explained through that cumulative percent. The other thing about cumulative percent is that you don't necessarily have to use their cumulative percent. You can always pull in or combine categories to make more sense of your data on your own. Say, like, you don't want to necessarily combine these two categories, but these two categories together, the 14 to 15-year-olds together, would represent a better category to explain together, and that would give you a cumulative percent of 36.4. And that would be 18.3 plus 18.1 would give you 36.4. And so, and you would want to say then why you would pull those two categories together, and it would be based on some notion of what your data was trying to tell, okay, or what the purpose of your data or collecting that data was for. Okay.